This is lesson 2.6, creating a complex model. In this lesson, you will learn how to use 3D modeling techniques to create a complex model. You will learn how to use multiple viewports to create a drawing. Back to Vectorworks. This is lesson 2.6. We're going to create a more complex shape. We're going to create a bracket which has some complex details to it, and I'd like to show you what that looks like. But first of all, we're going to start with a blank file. Just don't forget we're going to check our units. So document settings, units. I'm going to be using feet and inches, but I'll also give you the millimeter sizes as well. And I've got my active layer scale at 1:1. Let me just show you what we're going to make. We're going to make this bracket. Now you might look at this bracket and wonder how we're going to get started, so I'll lead you through all of those parts. But remember, what we're going to do is work a little bit at a time, building up this complex model using a workflow. We're going to create a simple extrusion, we're going to then create another simple extrusion, add it together, we're then going to create another simple extrusion and subtract it, and we're going to do all of these things just a little bit at a time. So that's what we're going to make, and I want you to start with your blank file. So we can change to a 3D view if you prefer. We can start with a right isometric and double click on the rectangle tool. So this rectangle is going to be 5.5 inches by 6 3/4. So this is 5.5 inches in that way, and it's 6.75 in that way. So if you're using millimeters, it's 140 millimeters by 170 millimeters. We're going to turn off the position at next click, and we're going to set the center of this object so it goes right at 0, 0, like that. That allows me to click on it and extrude this up by 12 millimeters or 1/2 inch. So that's the first part. So there it is there. I'll just zoom in. The next thing I want is a circle. So I'll go to my circle tool, and we want a circle which is about 40 millimeters, which is just over 1.5 inches, and I want to use that mode there. So coming up from there, this size should be 42 millimeters. There it is there, which is 1 5/8. Click. Click on that circle and extrude that circle all the way down till it meets the other end, like that. So I've got a circle and I've got that other object. Now if you remember when we did this in the last exercise, what I should have been able to do was to type in 1 5/8, so 42 millimeters, click. When I extrude this down, if I hold down the Alt or the Option key and click, it'll actually join those two together, or in this case it'll subtract them. So you might remember when we go into the object, it's a solid subtraction. When we come away from the object, it's a solid addition. So in this case we can't use that technique. So 1 5/8, enter, and we want that to go vertically up, come down here. So since we can't use the instant mode, we'll have to select those two, right click and go add solids, so it joins them together. Back to my circle tool, select here, back to this mode here, so the center mode. So I need this one to be about 40 millimeters, so 40 mm. It's just giving me a little bit of a fight here. It doesn't seem to want to go in the direction that I want it to go in. So since it's going 40 millimeters, it really only needs to have a length of 20 millimeters in that direction, because it wants to be just a little bit short. So in this case, what we've ended up with is a 1 millimeter thick wall. So let's make it 19 millimeters, because it should have a little bit of a thickness. So 3/4 of an inch. Click. Now when we pull this through, we can hold down the Alt key, click, and it subtracts that whole part. So that's quite handy because it's now subtracted the entire whole for my object. So that's quite a lot of work we've done. So it's made it look, this complex bracket, it's actually started to look a lot more simple because of the workflow that I'm using. On the 3D modeling toolset, just here, we want to choose the fillet edge tool. I want a radius of about 1/4 inch, 6 millimeters. I want to click on that edge there, and there's another edge just in here. Hold down the Shift key, click on that edge, and then enter. And so that gives me my welded fillet radius through there. If this is too much, you can make it smaller. So I could make it 4 millimeters, for example, 1/8 of an inch. So that's quite a quick way of getting the shape that we want. If we go up to our OpenGL settings here and we choose our OpenGL options, make sure that your OpenGL options are set to very high. I've got draw edges turned on, and I've got my shadows turned on as well. Now there is no light at the moment. As soon as I put in a light, that'll make a big difference. If you don't turn on your high quality, then the 3D model just looks a little rough. You can see with low quality it just doesn't look very nice. So let's high quality, draw the edges, and you can see with my rendered view, drawing the edges just really improves our readability. Now earlier on we looked at our snapping palette. In module 1 it was, we looked at our snapping palette. I'm not sure that we looked at this one here, the Smart Edge, but now it's time for us to use this. If I double click on Smart Edge, it will open up this Smart Edge settings, and I've got here my Smart Edge, and I want to acquire the mouse edge if the mouse follows the edge. So I'm going to turn that on, because here I can use the T key to manually set my Smart Edge. I want this to be 1/2 inch, 12 millimeters, and OK. So I'm going to go back to my circle tool here. I want to acquire this edge here, so I move along the edge and I hit the T key, and you can see I get a dashed line running all the way through here. Let's just show you that again. T key, and there it is running through, and I can move away from that, and there's my offset line. So that's 1/2 inch or 12 millimeters away from that edge. Come along this edge and hit the T key again. Don't go to the center or one of these snap points, that won't work. So just run along the edge. Now you can see that I'm offset from 12 millimeters from that edge, 12 millimeters from this edge, and I need a 6 millimeter or 0.25, so a 1/2 inch hole. So pull that through, Alt key, click, and that makes a hole for me. So we can do that again. So run along this edge, hit the T key, run along this edge and hit the T key, find the offset for both of those, click. I'm just going to turn my view around so I can see it more easily. So let's do that again. So there, make sure that you've got the blue top surface. Hit the T key. There it is there. Come along this edge, hit the T key, offset, offset, offset. So this is 0.25, enter, enter again, pull that through, last minute hold down the Alt key and click. So let's turn our view around the other way. And we've got the other two to do. So I'm going to make sure. So the trick here is to make sure that my cursor is on that blue face. You might notice I'm not trying to touch the exact edge, I'm just inside it. So T key, do that again, T key, there it is there, offset. Now it may not work just along this, I'll do it again, T key, there's my offset, 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 0.25, so 6 millimeters, enter once, enter again, pull that through, Alt key, click. And the final one along here, T key. Along here, T key. It's not working, so I'll do that again, T key. I'm going to keep going at that until I get what I want. And it might be easier if I turn my view like that. So let's run along that edge there, T key, there's my offset. I've lost this one along here, so T key again, there it is there, offset, offset and offset, click. This is 0.25 or 6 millimeters, and then I can pull that through, Alt key and click. So I've now created this more complex shape, and I've used a series of techniques. What I need now is a quick way to make a drawing. Now this bracket should actually be standing up the other way. So I'm going to change to a side view. It's my right view there. I'm going to change this to orthogonal projection. So what I'd really like to do is to rotate this. So right click, rotate, and rotate left 90 degrees. So it actually stands up. I'm going to grab its bottom corner and move it to my page center. So when I go to a front view, it looks like the front. When I go to a top view, it looks like the plan, and that should be perfect. So what I need to do is to create viewports. Now you might remember last time we created viewports, we went through View, Create Viewport, and we did Top, Front, and Side. I'd like to change my workspace. Tools on the menu bar, Workspaces, and I'm going to choose one of these designer workspaces. Either Designer, Architect, Landmark, just not Fundamentals. I'm going to choose my Architect BIM workspace. Now the reason I'm changing the workspace is there is a command I want to use, but it's not available in the Fundamentals workspace. So you need to change to one of these industry workspaces. I'm just going to move my Resource Manager out of the way. The reason is that I'm looking for a command called Create Multiple Viewports. Create Multiple Viewports will create multiple viewports all at once for me. I'm going to change my viewport scale to half full size. I want third angle projection. I want the top, the front, and the right view. Click OK, and it has now created my view. So that's my top view, that's my front view, and that's my right view. How quick is that? It is so quick. So let's go to View on the menu bar, and we will update all viewports. So there it is. It's all up to date. I just want to check these, make sure these are using the formatting that I want. There's a setting here which is hidden line, and I'd rather like those to be dashed hidden line, and let's just update those. I'd like to point out this option here, the multiple view panes. Let me click on that. I can now see different views of the same information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this one and close that active view pane. Right click here, I'm going to close that one as well, because I'd like to have this one as my 3D model, and I'd like this one to be split horizontally, and I'd like this one here to actually be my sheet layer. So if I double click here on my navigation palette, sheet layer, and I also have the option here, if I right click, I've got the same visibilities in all panes. I will turn that off because I would like this particular view to be my page, my printable page. So fit to page area, so I can now see what my page looks like. I want this one to actually be my model. And I want to see the entire model, and I'd like to see it from a rotated point of view. So I can zoom out, I can turn my view around, zoom in, there, that's good, and I want that one to be rendered. So let's render that view. This one, I'd also like to see my entire object. I'd like this to be rotated the other way. And I'd like it to be the underside if I can. Now I sometimes find this tricky unless I go to OpenGL, and then I can see that I'm looking at the underside of my object. I'd also like this to be in a normal perspective view. Now just to show you why we've got these multiple view panes, if I go to my drawing toolset, I want to start a line from this corner, and I want to finish it in this one here, which is kind of handy, the ability to start from one corner and finish in another place. Now I could have done that in another view, but what about if I wanted to go from there to the center of this view, or to the center of that, or to the center of this, finding something that might be hidden underneath. That's really handy, being able to go draw from one view to another, or from one view pane to another. We've used the fillet edge tool before, so we're going to use that again. So my 3D modeling, here we are here, my fillet edge tool, 1/4 inch. I want to highlight that edge Shift key, highlight that edge. I also want to highlight that edge there with my Shift key and that edge. So I've chosen 2 edges in one view and 2 edges in the other. Then I can go Update. It updates my edges. And then I can go View on the menu bar and I can choose Update all viewports. So these are now updated, and you can see it's now got the curved edges of my design. So I find this a really handy way to draw. Now I actually have quite a small screen that I'm drawing on. Quite often what I do is to move these across, so I've got a main modeling window, then I've got a secondary modeling window, and then I have my printable view or my sheet view down here. Very handy way to draw. This is the end of lesson 2.6. In this lesson you learned how to use several 3D modeling techniques to create a complex model. You learned how to use multiple viewports to create a drawing.